last breaths are sacred. When I imagine my final days, I see bubbles. I see the ocean. I see music. Even now, as I seek help to end my life, there is still so much beauty. You just have to be brave enough to see it.
Yeah, so she's no longer with us. All is beauty.
Wow, they're making it trendy.
Yeah, very trendy. That's his part. They're spending money on advertising to say to you, hey, you know, if you're depressed, you're anxious.
You can tap out.
You can tap out now. Tap out.
We support this.
This will help the global population problem that we think we have, right? This is part of the plan. So since 2016, I mean, it's absolutely evil. It like gives me chills thinking about this. Like, this is what we're facing right now. It's incredibly disturbing. Since 2016, Canada's medical assistance in dying, that's what it's called, medical assistance in dying, or MAID, M-A-I-D, their laws have allowed severely or terminally ill and disabled people to choose to die by either euthanasia, legal drugs administered by a physician, or physician-assisted suicide, which typically entails a provider that is prescribing lethal drugs and then a patient takes them independently. So listen to these numbers. More than 10,000 Canadians died this way last year, up 32% from 2020, and accounting for 3.3% of all deaths in Canada.
That's a staggering number.
Yeah.
3.3% of all deaths.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's already the most lax in the world. Canada is already the most lax in the world. The measures are set to grow even more permissive. Starting next March, the country will allow people suffering solely from mental illness to seek euthanasia. As we've been reporting here on the show, of course, we've been covering this mental illness act, part of it, which is going to roll out in March of 2023. So this dispatch from dispatch.com, here's an interesting take. They published this piece this morning, and I want to read it to you. So don't worry about trying to follow along here. I'm going to read this to you. Opponents of the laws argue they diminish the lives of people with disabilities and can create pressure on people to kill themselves. Persons with disabilities may decide to end their lives because of broader social factors such as loneliness, social isolation, and lack of access to quality social services. United Nations officials wrote in a letter to Canadian leaders last year warning the country's expanding MAID laws could violate the UN's Human Rights Declaration. A social assumption might follow or be subtly reinforced that it's better to be dead than to live with a disability.
You think?
Yeah, and that's already happening. So here's a few examples from this dispatch piece. Such concerns are not hypothetical. Roger Foley, hospitalized with a degenerative brain disorder in Ontario, recorded a conversation with a hospital director of ethics earlier this year in which his ethicist reminded him in a stay at the hospital that it would cost north of $1,500 a day.
That's like a dog. Like, literally, do you want to pay the cost of caring for this dog or put them down?
Yeah.
Like, you have these conversations with a vet.
But humans are not dogs, right? So according to Foley, hospital staff raised the idea of assisted dying, unprompted. Like the hospital administrator, the director, just brought it up. It's like, hey, I know this is going to be expensive. Here's an idea.
Or you could not.
Or you could just die. We got ways to that. We've got ways.
That's crazy.
Canadian Sheila Elson, whose adult daughter, Candace Lewis, has several medical conditions, including cerebral palsy, said in 2016, a doctor brought up assisted suicide for Lewis in front of the young girl and told Elson that she was being selfish when she rejected the idea. You're being selfish to not let your daughter die, and we can take care of her right now. All we need to do is just fill out some paperwork and go down the hallway. We can get this taken care of for you. That your daughter that has cerebral palsy, we can take care of that for you.
There was an episode of Scrubs where they made fun of this. Like, what if we did this like animals?
Yeah.
Like how you would put down a horse with a shotgun, right?
Yeah.
And in the sort of scene, JD, the doctor, he's like, I don't like the looks of that leg, Mr. Johnson. Right? Like,
right.
It's as if it's so ridiculous that we should only talk
comedy.
about this in parody.
Right. This is like a Monty Python sketch or a Scrubs sketch, right? Like,
yeah.
This is real. This is Canada. And it's happening in other countries as well. Like I said, 11, Switzerland expanding, Belgium expanding. Well, we've been covering the new eugenics program on this show for a while. Many people wrongly believe that the government-assisted eugenics ended after World War II. It didn't. It is alive and well with just a bit of rebranding in 2022. So it's still here. As we've talked about on this show, this all has its roots in Malthusian policies. So this is Thomas Malthus. He was an English cleric who believed in population control. The idea that the world can't handle so many people. It gave rise to the eugenics programs in the early part of the last century. They were able to say, hey, we've got, what he's saying is really troubling because we're going to run out of food. We've got to start putting people down. We've got to start making sure that people can't breed again.
And also they wanted to selectively breed out undesirable traits in humans such as
crime, criminals, theft.
Yes, yeah. People who scored low on tests, people who had disabilities, people
and they actually thought that they could breed out poverty. As if somehow poverty is like a part of your genetic DNA, right? That you could breed out people who just can't make money.
Actually, though, the wealthiest American families were poor within 3 to 5 generations. For instance, the Vanderbilts, who today would be wealthier than Bill Gates by some estimates, within 3 generations, that generational wealth was gone.
Because the kids, they didn't understand how.
So the idea that you could continue to breed wealth has been disproven. So I don't know how you could then use it to think that you could breed out poverty.
So the American eugenics movement embraced negative eugenics with the goal to eliminate undesirable genetic traits in the human race through selective breeding. Basically, the United States would push you off into camps where you would be sanitized and sterilized, right? So you couldn't breed, and they would kill you off. Never to breed again, never to be a part of the problem again.
What's interesting about this is that these are things that breeders do with animals, right? They only breed the strongest for certain things and certain traits. That's been understood. But humans are the only species which takes extra care of innately, we take extra care of our weakest. It's just something in us. If somebody needs help, that's what makes us human. Whereas most species will sort of like push out of the nest, the one that's least viable. We don't do that. So this is what makes us human. So if we start to accept this, then we are fundamentally becoming less human.
And this is exactly.
Well, and also, we can't